So, Arash, in the old days, if you were to win either the AFC or NFC championship, and then you had a week off before the Super Bowl, a lot of guys would still be partying. They would be on day 5 of a bender, but it's 2025 and the world doesn't operate like that anymore. What do teams do now in the week in between before this lead up, before they're going to head off to New Orleans?
Well, Maz, it's funny because yesterday and today are probably the two heaviest days of installs, game plans, all those kinds of things for the teams in the Super Bowl. You know, you win Sunday, Monday and Tuesday is a lot of the tickets, logistics, family travel. How is all this going to work with the hotels, et cetera? Plus, you got to get your treatment. You're probably banged up, not just from the game before, but from the season. But yesterday and today are two of the real heavy days. Even tomorrow, because once you get to the Super Bowl site, it's just an altogether different vibe. Right now, you're still in your team facility. You still have all of your, resources that you're able to use, and I think all of that is so important for a team because they're getting a lot of what matters football wise done now because a lot of hoopla takes over next week.
I don't think a lot of fans realize for a football team to travel anywhere, it is a quite the operation. It is a road show of we see players and coaches, training staff, medical staff, equipment, all the front office, and all of that. Now you get to see all of this. So basically, you have to transport a small football city. They both do. To go and do that. So how do you start to block all that out? Because it's also party time in New Orleans where people are there to have a good time and probably maybe go to the football game on Sunday.
Yeah. So if you're, say, Kansas City, or I mean, it doesn't matter, Kansas City or Philly, you know, I'm assuming the Eagles are just going to take over the Saints facility, the Saints practice facility, their building, their film room, their treatment room, et cetera. You got to get all of your stuff over there. The other team will probably set up shop at Tulane University, where the college team is. So it's not just that you're getting players and coaches over there to do all, like, you have to move your entire operation there. So what does that mean? Okay, so you arrive on Sunday. Both teams will have an advanced staff that has already set up shop in New Orleans so that when the players and coaches touch down, everything's already ready to go. Everything is all systems from film, equipment, training staff. Monday is kind of a chill day for the teams. And then Monday night, each team has to do a media night. Now, for coaches, this is getting out of their routine. They're used to having meetings on Monday to get ready for Tuesday. So there are a lot more obligations that you have throughout the week, which is why yesterday, today, tomorrow are so important to get everything in. During a Super Bowl week, Wednesday is the main day of practice. And then Thursday, Friday, the coaches are backing their guys off. Stay off your feet, less running around, be as fresh as possible. Because the other thing, Maz, you can't do is you can't just overemphasize the same things over and over again, because then the message gets stale and the urgency gets a little less. And what's wild about Super Bowl week is sometimes teams, say the Patriots, they added that goal line 3-corner look after their Friday practice in Arizona. Like, their practice week was done. Then they added the look and they just walked it through in the hotel. And Malcolm Butler ends up making the interception. So it's just so interesting to see how it all unfolds, depending on how each team wants to approach it.
You're covering the game next week. You will be in New Orleans. How many Super Bowls is this for you? And do you remember your first one?
I remember the first one. That was in Dallas. It was Green Bay against Pittsburgh. How fitting for a lifelong Vikings fan to watch Green Bay win a Super Bowl. I remember a few things about that week. There was a snow, hail, ice storm in Dallas. The Dallas Metroplex has a population of like 6 million people, and they had 2 snowplows for the entire city. I remember that. I remember Clay Matthews making an incredible play late in the game. Graham Harrell, a former Saskatchewan third-string quarterback, I think. Backup quarterback. Graham was the third string quarterback of the Packers that year. I've done a bunch. The most memorable one for me was being 20, 30 feet away from Malcolm Butler making that play. And I didn't see it happen, Mass, because we were basically standing at about the 5-yard line, and when you're that close to the field and there's a bunch of people in front of us, I'm kind of on my tiptoes. I was so convinced the ball was going to be handed off to Marshawn Lynch in that spot. And I'm like, wait a minute, what happened? And then there's this explosion in the stadium. And then I looked up on the Jumbotron and everyone's jumping all over Butler. I'm like, oh my God, they threw the football. What are they doing? So
I know. So when you watch on the NFL Network now that game, and then you hear from Belichick, you hear how they installed the play, you hear from Malcolm Butler, you hear from shocked Seattle Seahawk players or whatever, and to do that, to come together, because a lot of us, whether you're in the stadium or watching TV, we're like, well, this game's over. Oh, the Patriots are going to lose. And then somehow they don't. And
I know,
just to see it go down. Oh, here it is right here. This is crazy. This is
and
crazy.
Brandon Browner was the corner. Brandon Browner, the former Calgary Stampeder, he was the one who was physical off the line that allowed Butler to jump the route to make that play.
I still remember when Browner was at the top of his game. Now, keep in mind, am I wrong here? Is Brandon Browner's in jail at the moment for a crime? Is he not?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, okay. But when he was at the top of his game in football, he was pretty good in the CFL and the NFL. Okay, so the Eagles were there a couple, I had mentioned this. The game was on NFL Network last night, and I forgot how Philadelphia built a big first half lead against Kansas City. And it was like, uh-oh, look at this. And then, we all know it ended. The Chiefs just chip away, and they don't panic. So they've been there recently. The Chiefs are going for 3 in a row. Is there an advantage, or is it a saw-off because they both have recent Super Bowl experience with a good chunk of their rosters?
Yeah, I think it's pretty even and from that standpoint. And I think that's something that, unless you're in the building or have played like a marathon football game, you don't get quite a grasp of, is how long the day is and how long the game is and how much of an impact that makes. Like, the TV timeouts are longer because they're charging $8 million for a 30-second commercial. The halftime is longer because it's a featured act. Everything is delayed. And so guys by the fourth quarter are winded. There's a lot more cramping. There's a lot more exhaustion. To me, the depth of your roster is actually going to be important in this football game. Kid like Sidney Brown from London, Ontario, playing safety for Philadelphia, could end up making a play in this game that's going to be significant, because you're going to need everybody on your roster. We talk again, I don't want to wear out Malcolm Butler here. Malcolm Butler didn't start that Super Bowl. They didn't bring him in until halftime of that game. He was only on the field in that situation because they went 3 corners. So it's the understanding that, okay, the first quarter is the first quarter and the first half is the first half, but how do I manage my body? How do I manage the whole emotion of it? How do I make sure that I keep my gas tank as not full, but not depleted when it comes down to the biggest moments of the football game?
So here we are, 9 days out from the big game. What's the bigger storyline right now? Mahomes going for 3, or Saquon Barkley trying to get that first after such a dominating first season in Philly?
I think overall, the biggest story is Mahomes going for the three-peat, Kansas City going for the three-peat. And if Mahomes does it, he is on a trajectory to put himself vaulting past Tom Brady. If Patrick wins his 4th, getting to his 6th, wow. But to me, Maz, the football story here is how Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry this year have altogether changed the narrative and conversation around the running back. Like 2 years ago,
they're
it was
important
dime
again.
a dozen. Anybody could be a running back. You just plug anybody in. It doesn't matter. The position's irrelevant, et cetera, et cetera. Saquon Barkley is in the MVP conversation. Saquon Barkley took a team that went into absolute meltdown mode last year and has vaulted them here. His home run runs are just incredible. And to me, he has changed now how organizations are going to have to manage this position. At 12 million bucks, that's what a safety makes. An offensive guard is making $21 million this year. What's more valuable to a team? Because where would the Eagles be without Saquon? And that to me is a really fascinating story.
Arash Madani joins us on the Western Pizza guest hotline. We're coast to coast. So, Arash, you're saying, because if we follow you on social media last night and you're blowing things up, that the best player in all of pro sports is a Canadian. And I was like, wow, that's some high praise for Corey Perry. Can you explain who it's not Corey Perry. Who are you talking about here? Who in your mind is the best player in pro sports?
So in team sports, because it's hard to compare individual sports, golf and tennis with the rest. And I want to give a little bit of context in that from a participation standpoint, Maz, in the entire world, the most people play soccer than any other sport. And number 2 is basketball. Basketball is the second biggest participation sport on earth. And the best basketball player in the world right now is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. But the thing is, this guy from Hamilton, Ontario, to me is the best athlete in any sport. Like, you think about who the MVPs of each league are right now. Take your McDavid and your Matthews. Take your, I don't know, Lamar or Josh Allen. Take your, I don't even know on MVP, Aaron Judge. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has taken Oklahoma City on his back. He has 2 50-plus point games already this season. No Canadian has ever done that in the NBA. He has Oklahoma City as the best team in all of basketball. They are a title contender. And unless he suffers a catastrophic injury, Maz, I am telling you, this guy is going to be the MVP of the NBA this year. To me, there is no doubt in my mind of that.
So if you're uncovering this guy for a lot of it, where did he play his college ball? You're saying he's from Hamilton, but where did he play his college ball?
So Gilgeous-Alexander went down to a U.S. prep school for high school. Then he went to the University of Kentucky, played for Coach John Calipari and all those guys. PJ Washington, who's playing in Dallas right now, they were teammates. He got drafted by the Clippers and moved to OKC in the Paul George deal. And he has just been on this ridiculous trajectory. In 2023 at the World Cup, not only did he get Canada into the Olympics, not single-handedly, but pretty much. He was the best player in the entire tournament. Got Canada in the Olympics for the first time since Sydney 2000. And he is already committed for the LA 2028 Olympics, where the mission is going to be a medal. Somebody asked me, what's your comp for Shai? And my answer was Roger Federer, because it's almost like he's floating. There's very little impact on the ground. He's able to stop and start effortlessly. He's able to just completely change the dynamic of the game. The athleticism is off the charts. His basketball IQ is off the charts. His mom, Maz, actually competed as a track athlete at the 92 Barcelona Olympics. So there's some pretty good athletic genes in the Gilgeous-Alexander family.
Some good lineage there. All right.
Yeah.
Before it had a name, it's been going on forever. You worked in the CFL. You were part of this. I say that it's never stopped. It happened. It goes on all season. Tampering in the CFL. And so the Ed Hervey window, or the tampering window, opens on Sunday. It's been going on heavy since the season stopped, and now it's going to be legal. CFL free agency. with 1-year contracts, you can blow up your team and rebuild it in no time flat. What are you expecting over these next couple of days? First off, where does a Wynton McManus land? Because he's been Argo. We had RJ Bradhead on, and he said we need help on defense, and I'm like, well, a Wynton McManus solves a lot of your problems on defense.
Yeah, I look at the riders, and I say to myself, okay, there's different ways of approaching this, but ultimately you get to the West Final, and what happens? Kenny Lawler torches you for 177 and 3 touchdowns, right? So to me, this needs to be addressed two ways. One is by pass rush, second is by corner. Is a Deshaun Amos from the Argos a possibility, for instance? I'm not sure. They were gifted Marcus Sales when he got cut by BC last year, but maybe he's priced himself out of his task. But I just look at, on the corners, is that something of a priority there? They also need to get to the quarterback. I mean, let's be real. And
yes,
Micah Johnson is not just 37. He's played a lot of football 37. So those are, priorities. I wonder if a guy like Mike Rose, I know he's not a free agent per se, but he played for Corey Mason Calgary. The Stamps just released him. Do they go do that?
I know.
And the loss of Trevor Reed, Maz, I mean, that's a big one. You can never have enough offensive linemen. Losing your best one hurts. So, when I think about, it's sexy to go after a receiver, it's sexy to go after a running back and all these kinds of things. But football is won at the point of attack. So how do you upgrade your offensive and defensive line, especially when you want to get to the quarterback? And ultimately, if you get back to a West Final, how do you make sure you don't get torched by a home run hitter receiver like Lawler? You address your secondary, you address the corner position. Those to me make the most sense for what Saskatchewan's priorities should be.
Well, with Jake Ceresna being a free agent, and he's Canadian, and Tyrell Ford being lights out and a Canadian, let's say you were able to add both of those. Just passport alone, how you can restructure a good chunk of your team on offense and defense. Because to me, last year, Tyrell Ford was, outside of Roland Milligan Jr., to me, probably was the second best secondary player in the CFL. He's a game changer. And I think he's only going to get better.
Yeah, and I think going back to the Ceresna point too is, I think if there's anything we've learned in the Dinwiddie era, because let's be real, Dinwiddie's running the football operation, not Michael Clemens. If an Argos player gets to free agency, they're probably gone because the expectation that the player has in terms of what they're going to make on the market, Toronto isn't going to pay them. Toronto's going to re-up their guys before they get to market. If you get to February, insert date here, depending on the year, they're likely gone. Ceresna's a game changer, man. He's a pro, and he's done it everywhere he's been. So that to me makes a lot of sense. The Ford one's an interesting one. I hadn't thought of him. It's amazing, isn't it? Everyone's on a 1-year deal. Everyone's just a free agent all the time. It's funny how it's all changed so quickly.
Well, and here's the thing. And Jeremy O'Day, Dave Thomas talked to him earlier in the show. He did press today talking about free agency and all of that. But the one thing that we didn't address, BC has ripped the can wide open when it comes to this marketing money thing. So I'm all in. As a fan, I'm like, whatever it takes, contract wise, marketing money wise. We had Darian on the other day, and I said, Darian, were you guys over the salary cap in 2013? I said, nobody cares if you were. All we remember are the championships. That's all we want. Whatever it takes to get these guys here, because I agree, we're a few players away. And last year, and you saw that when Amari Henderson went down, all of the shuffling that had to go on for one player being hurt on our defense, which hurt our secondary. And keep in mind, Roland Milligan was obviously in a different world last year, but the season before, when we lost him due to injury, look at how that decimated our defense. So having one player change your complete structure, I don't think you can't play that way. So you need the solid backups. You need the depth.
But Maz, but you need to find guys and develop them through the course of a season. You can't just go shopping in free agency. You need to hit on draft picks, and you need to find Americans and make them be impact players. And I don't disagree with you about spending money. I think it's important to. These guys don't make enough as is. But my only question is, why do you have a salary cap if everybody's looking to circumvent it by any means necessary? What's the point of all this? Who are we trying to fool here?
I'm of the opinion, for the longest time, before there was a cap, the riders were a have-not just because of the situation they're in. Then things change, and we're one of the more, we have the richest. It's like Hal Steinbrenner saying the other day, teams are going to have a tough time keeping pace with Dodgers and Yankees spending and all that going for. To me, if you haven't spent it,
tears, Al. Cry me a bucket of tears.
I know.
No, Matt, I'm just going to say this, okay? The next time an owner cries poor, remember this. If there's anything that COVID taught us when it came to sports, is that these jokers were willing to play games in front of nobody. Mm-hmm. And they didn't do it out of the goodness of their heart. And because Green Bay is a community-run organization, doesn't have a private owner, their books are public. Every NFL franchise is in the black based on the TV deal and their collective money from merch and everything else. So NFL franchises are profitable before they sell a ticket, a parking spot, a soft drink, a beer, a hot dog, a sweet, you name it. Baseball played in front of nobody. Hockey played in front of nobody. The owners want you to believe that the players are the greedy ones, and yet they're the ones charging you $9.50 for a popcorn and $8 for a bottle of water that you can buy down the street at the grocery store for a dime. Don't buy their BS. That's it. There's my rant.
And as fans, and as rabid fans that don't understand logic, or we run on emotion, we just want a winner. When we talk to you on Tuesday, will you be in New Orleans?
I will be in New Orleans. We fly in this weekend, so looking forward to it.
Alrighty. It's Arash Madani, coast to coast. Safe travels, my friend. We will catch up with you next week. Arash is going to be covering the Super Bowl next week between the Eagles and the Chiefs. And as we mentioned earlier, the Chiefs are still 1.5 point favorites, according to Coolbet.